There is a version of yourself that still exists only as possibility, a version so composed, so deliberate, and so relentlessly consistent that if you stood face to face with that person today, the distance between who you are and who you could become would be difficult to believe. That version is not stronger because life became easier. It is stronger because it stopped asking comfort for permission before taking action. Stoicism teaches that the greatest battle is never against circumstances, other people, or fate. It is against the restless mind that keeps searching for reasons to delay what it already knows is right. The moment that inner struggle begins to change, everything else begins to change with it. Most people spend their lives trying to control what has never truly belonged to them while neglecting the one thing that always has, their own character. They wait for confidence. They wait for motivation. They hope discipline will arrive when the conditions finally feel right. The Stoics saw through that illusion. Freedom is not found in favorable circumstances. It is earned each time principles are chosen over impulses, reason over emotion, and purpose over temporary comfort. Real self-mastery is quiet. It rarely announces itself, yet its presence gradually becomes impossible to ignore. The transformation begins long before anyone else can see it. It starts in private decisions, repeated without applause, until they become part of your nature. One promise kept, one impulse resisted, one difficult choice made without hesitation. Those moments seem insignificant on their own, yet they slowly reshape the way you think, the way you act, and ultimately the person you become. The greatest victories are often invisible at first, because they are won within the mind long before they appear in the world. Think about how many promises you have made to yourself that quietly disappeared before anyone else even knew they existed. No one saw the moment they were made, and no one noticed when they faded away. Yet your mind noticed every single one. It remembers the mornings when determination felt effortless and the evenings when convenience quietly replaced commitment. Each time that cycle repeats, something subtle changes. The goal itself may be forgotten, but the habit of abandoning your own decisions begins to settle into your character. This is why the deepest consequence of inconsistency is not the unfinished project or the missed opportunity. It is the silent agreement your mind begins making with itself that your intentions are temporary, your standards are flexible, and your words carry very little weight. Most people believe confidence disappears because they fail too often, but that is rarely the real reason. Confidence begins to erode whenever your actions repeatedly contradict your own promises. Imagine placing money into a bank account for years, only to withdraw more than you ever deposited. Eventually, the account becomes empty. Self-trust works in much the same way. Every promise you keep becomes another deposit. Every excuse becomes a withdrawal. The Stoics understood that character is never formed through dramatic moments alone. It is shaped quietly through ordinary decisions repeated over months and years. They believed a person's life reflects what they consistently practice, not what they occasionally desire. This way of thinking removes the temptation to wait for extraordinary motivation, because motivation has never been the foundation of lasting discipline. Consistency has always been built on something much quieter. There is a reason private victories matter more than public announcements. The modern world encourages people to speak constantly about their ambitions, their routines, and the person they hope to become. It creates the illusion that talking about change is almost the same as creating it. Yet there is a hidden danger in seeking recognition before the work has begun. Every compliment received for an intention can trick the mind into feeling rewarded without earning the result. The satisfaction arrives too early, leaving less urgency to continue once the excitement disappears. The Stoics warned against becoming attached to appearances because appearances often distract from substance. A disciplined person understands that genuine progress rarely needs an audience. The strongest foundations are usually built where no one is watching. Silence has a remarkable effect on the mind because it removes the temptation to perform. Once there is no audience to impress, only one question remains. Will you continue anyway? That question reveals far more about character than any declaration ever could. It is easy to feel determined when encouragement surrounds you. It is far more revealing to continue when no praise is expected, no recognition is coming, and no one would even notice if you stopped. Marcus Aurelius expressed this idea simply: waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one. This is where discipline quietly separates itself from motivation. Motivation often depends on emotion, while discipline depends on identity. One changes with circumstances. The other remains steady because it is rooted in principles rather than feelings. This shift does not happen overnight. The desire to be seen, appreciated, and validated is deeply human. Stoicism never asks anyone to deny that desire completely. Instead, it asks whether that desire deserves authority over your choices. There is a profound difference between appreciating encouragement and depending on it. The first allows gratitude, the second creates dependence. A person who requires constant recognition gradually loses the ability to act without it. But someone who learns to draw satisfaction from the work itself becomes increasingly independent. Their emotional state is no longer determined by applause or criticism because the standard they follow exists within, not outside themselves. As this inner standard becomes stronger, something unexpected begins to happen. The constant mental noise starts losing its influence. The urge to compare yourself with everyone around you slowly weakens because your attention has found a more meaningful direction. Every day becomes less about proving your worth and more about expressing your values through action. Even setbacks begin to feel different. Instead of interpreting failure as evidence that you should quit, you begin seeing it as information that helps refine your approach. This perspective does not remove difficulty, but it changes your relationship with it. Obstacles stop feeling like personal attacks and become opportunities to practice the qualities you have chosen to cultivate. Over time, the promises you make to yourself become different as well. They become fewer, quieter, and far more deliberate. There is no longer a need to announce a new beginning every few weeks because the beginning has already taken place internally. You stop chasing the emotional excitement that comes with declaring a fresh start and begin appreciating the quiet satisfaction of simply continuing. One disciplined action leads naturally into the next until consistency no longer feels like something you force. It becomes the way you move through life. That transformation rarely attracts attention in its early stages, yet it changes everything that follows. True strength has always grown this way, almost unnoticed at first, gathering itself in silence until even your own mind begins to trust the person you are becoming. If these ideas resonate with you and you're committed to building a calmer mind, stronger character, and a life guided by reason rather than impulse, consider subscribing. Every conversation here is an opportunity to think more deeply, practice timeless Stoic wisdom, and strengthen the habits that quietly shape an extraordinary life. But silence by itself changes very little if your emotions continue making every important decision for you. It is possible to stop talking about your goals and still remain trapped by the same patterns that have always held you back. Many people confuse quietness with discipline, yet the two are not the same. Silence only creates space. What fills that space determines whether anything truly changes. If the old habits of hesitation, avoidance, and emotional reaction remain untouched, the absence of noise becomes nothing more than another form of waiting. The Stoics understood this distinction with remarkable clarity. They never claimed that emotions should disappear. They simply refused to let passing feelings become permanent authorities. Fear could speak, frustration could appear, doubt could knock on the door, None of them, however, deserved the right to make decisions on behalf of reason. This idea challenges the way most people approach change because modern culture places enormous value on motivation. People wait to feel energized before beginning difficult work. They wait for confidence before taking the first step. They wait for the perfect mood, the perfect morning, or the perfect opportunity. The problem is not that these moments never arrive. The problem is that they never stay. Emotions move like weather across the sky. Some days are bright, others are filled with storms, and none of them remain forever. If your commitment depends entirely on how pleasant the weather feels inside your mind, your direction will constantly change. One difficult conversation can ruin your focus. One disappointing result can convince you to stop. One uncomfortable emotion becomes enough to abandon something that truly mattered only a day before. The Stoics observed this pattern centuries ago. They noticed that suffering often came not from events themselves, but from the judgments people attached to those events. A delayed success became evidence of failure. Temporary discomfort became proof that something was wrong. Fatigue became permission to quit. Instead of accepting these interpretations automatically, they practiced creating distance between what they felt and what they chose. That small space between emotion and action became the birthplace of freedom. Within that space, reason could finally speak. It could acknowledge the discomfort without surrendering to it. It could recognize fear without allowing fear to become the author of the next decision. This quiet discipline rarely attracted attention, yet it gradually transformed the way a person responded to every challenge life presented. Think about the moments when you have delayed something important. The task itself was often not impossible. It simply felt uncomfortable. The mind immediately began searching for relief instead of completion. It offered convincing explanations that sounded reasonable in the moment. Tomorrow would be better. More preparation was needed. Energy would return later. These thoughts rarely announce themselves as excuses. They often disguise themselves as logic. That is why they are so persuasive. They appeal to comfort while pretending to protect you. Unless you learn to recognize this habit, it becomes almost invisible. You begin believing every emotional impulse deserves careful consideration, even when it repeatedly leads you away from the life you claim to want. Real discipline begins when you stop treating every feeling as a command. This does not mean becoming cold or emotionally detached. Stoicism has often been misunderstood in this way, but its purpose was never emotional suppression. The Stoics experienced grief, disappointment, joy, and affection, just like everyone else. The difference was that they practiced observing these experiences instead of immediately obeying them. As Epictetus reminded his students, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. They understood that emotions contain information, but information is not the same as instruction. Feeling tired does not always mean resting is the wisest choice. Feeling afraid does not always mean danger is present. Feeling discouraged does not necessarily mean progress has stopped. Once this distinction becomes clear, you begin reclaiming authority over your own choices. There is a remarkable shift that happens when your actions become guided by principles instead of moods. You stop asking yourself whether you feel like acting and begin asking whether the action aligns with the person you intend to become. That question changes everything. It redirects attention away from temporary comfort and toward lasting character. Suddenly, the difficult decision becomes simpler because the standard has already been established. The mind no longer debates endlessly. It remembers the commitment and follows through. Each repetition strengthens this pattern until consistency feels less like an act of force and more like a natural expression of who you are becoming. This process is gradual, almost invisible at first. You may still feel resistance every morning. Doubt may continue visiting when challenges appear. The difference is that these experiences slowly lose their influence. They become background noise instead of driving forces. Every time you continue despite discomfort, your mind learns something important. It learns that unpleasant feelings are survivable. It learns that action can exist without enthusiasm. It learns that temporary resistance does not deserve permanent control. These lessons accumulate quietly, strengthening your confidence in ways that motivational speeches never can. Confidence earned through repeated action is fundamentally different from confidence built on emotion because it rests on evidence instead of hope. Eventually, the relationship with yourself begins to change. You stop seeing discipline as a constant battle against your own nature and start recognizing it as an agreement with your highest values. The internal arguments become shorter. Decisions require less emotional negotiation. What once felt extraordinary becomes ordinary because your standards have quietly risen above the level where excuses once lived. This is one of the deepest insights within Stoic philosophy. Freedom does not arrive when life becomes easier. It arrives when your inner stability becomes stronger than your changing emotions. From that point forward, confidence is no longer borrowed from motivation or favorable circumstances. It is built through repeated proof that your actions remain steady even when your feelings do not, and that quiet certainty becomes one of the strongest forms of strength a person can possess. Once your emotions stop controlling your actions, another challenge quietly appears. It becomes impossible to ignore the influence of the environment surrounding you. Even a disciplined mind can slowly drift if it spends every day surrounded by constant distraction, endless opinions, and habits that pull attention in every direction. This is why growth is never only an internal process. The places you spend your time, the conversations you entertain, and the information you consume all leave subtle impressions on your thinking. Many people believe they are making independent decisions, yet much of what they do is simply a reaction to the atmosphere they have placed themselves in. The Stoics understood that protecting the mind requires more than resisting temptation. It also requires becoming aware of the conditions that quietly shape your thoughts before you even realize they are being shaped. The modern world rarely leaves room for genuine reflection. Every quiet moment is quickly filled with another notification, another opinion, another source of entertainment competing for your attention. The result is not simply distraction, but dependence. A mind that never experiences silence slowly forgets how to think without outside stimulation. It begins looking outward for answers that can only be discovered inward. The Stoics practiced regular periods of solitude, not because they rejected society, but because they understood that a person cannot return to the world with wisdom if they never spend time examining themselves. Reflection was not an escape from responsibility. It was preparation for meeting responsibility with greater clarity. There is something revealing about sitting quietly with nothing demanding your attention except your own thoughts. You begin noticing patterns that previously escaped your awareness. Certain fears repeat themselves. Certain excuses always arrive at the same moment. Certain memories continue shaping present decisions long after the events themselves have passed. None of this becomes visible while the mind remains constantly occupied. Distraction delays self-understanding, but it never replaces it. The longer you postpone these encounters with yourself, the more control unseen habits continue to exercise over your life. Clarity begins not when every problem disappears, but when you finally become honest enough to observe what has been guiding your choices all along. This honesty requires courage because it removes every convenient explanation. It is easy to blame circumstances when there is no time to reflect. It is much harder to maintain those stories once you begin examining your own reactions carefully. The Stoics constantly reminded themselves that while external events remain uncertain, their responses always deserve attention. As Epictetus wisely said, "Make the best use of what is in your power and take the rest as it happens." That simple distinction shifts responsibility back where it belongs. Instead of asking why life continues creating obstacles, the question quietly becomes whether your own thinking has been creating obstacles that no longer need to exist. This realization is not meant to produce guilt. It produces freedom, because anything rooted in your own habits can eventually be changed through deliberate practice. The environment still matters, but you start choosing it more intentionally. You notice which conversations leave your mind clearer and which leave it scattered. You recognize that certain habits create peace, while others quietly drain your energy without offering anything meaningful in return. This awareness does not lead to judging other people. It leads to taking responsibility for the conditions under which your own character continues to develop. Just as a gardener cannot control the weather but can carefully prepare the soil, you may not control every influence entering your life, yet you can decide which influences deserve a permanent place within your attention. Over time, these moments of deliberate solitude stop feeling uncomfortable and begin feeling necessary. They become opportunities to return to yourself before the world once again demands your attention. In those quiet spaces, the mind gradually becomes less reactive and more observant. You notice emotions without immediately following them. You notice distractions without automatically accepting them. You notice fears without allowing them to define the next decision. This growing awareness creates a remarkable kind of independence, not because you no longer value other people, but because your direction is no longer determined by their expectations. The Stoics understood that the strongest foundation for any meaningful life is an examined mind. A person who regularly withdraws into honest reflection returns to daily life with greater patience, clearer judgment, and a steadiness that cannot easily be shaken. That quiet strength rarely attracts attention in the beginning, but it slowly changes every conversation, every decision, and every challenge that follows, because it is no longer the noise of the world determining your path. It is the calm certainty developed in the moments when you finally learn to listen to yourself. When your decisions begin coming from clarity instead of impulse, people often notice the difference before you do. The change rarely announces itself with dramatic moments or obvious achievements. It appears in the small ways you respond to situations that once controlled you. Conversations become calmer, decisions become simpler, delays no longer provoke frustration, and criticism no longer lingers in your thoughts for days. Others may not understand exactly what has changed, but they sense that something is different. The version of you they expected to find is slowly disappearing. They were accustomed to someone who reacted quickly, explained every decision, defended every opinion, and searched for reassurance whenever uncertainty appeared. Instead, they begin encountering someone who speaks less, observes more, and allows actions to communicate what words once tried to prove. This quiet transformation often surprises people because it does not resemble the loud confidence they have learned to recognize. It resembles stability. Life quietly provides countless opportunities to practice this principle. A disagreement interrupts your day. A plan fails unexpectedly. Someone misunderstands your intentions or questions your choices without knowing the full story. These moments may seem ordinary, yet they reveal something important. They expose the habits that still operate beneath conscious awareness. The impulse to defend yourself immediately, the desire to win every argument, the need to correct every misunderstanding. None of these reactions necessarily come from wisdom. More often they arise from the discomfort of feeling temporarily unsettled. The Stoics encouraged pausing before responding because that brief moment creates enough distance for reason to replace impulse. Within that pause lies one of the most valuable forms of self-control a person can develop. Something else begins changing as well. You stop feeling responsible for managing how everyone perceives you. This realization often brings unexpected relief because so much unnecessary energy is spent trying to control opinions that were never fully within your control. The Stoics repeatedly reminded themselves that reputation belongs to other people, while character belongs only to the individual living it. That distinction creates remarkable freedom. Instead of shaping every action around possible reactions, you begin shaping your actions around principles that remain consistent regardless of approval or criticism. Ironically, this often earns more respect than constant efforts to appear respectable, because authenticity has a quiet authority that performance can never fully imitate. The same consistency also transforms the way you experience setbacks. Difficult moments no longer feel like interruptions to your progress because they become part of the practice itself. Every obstacle becomes another opportunity to reinforce patience instead of frustration, discipline instead of avoidance, and thoughtful action instead of emotional reaction. The Stoics never expected life to become free from hardship. They expected hardship to become one of their greatest teachers. This perspective changes the meaning of adversity entirely. Instead of asking whether life is being unfair, your attention naturally shifts toward asking how this moment can strengthen qualities that matter far beyond the immediate situation. Growth becomes less dependent on circumstances and more dependent on the way those circumstances are used. That reliability slowly transforms into something far more valuable than motivation. Motivation comes and goes with circumstances. It rises after a good night's sleep, after encouraging words, or after a small success, then quietly disappears the moment life becomes uncomfortable. If your progress depends on that changing emotional current, you will always move in cycles. A few days of determination will be followed by weeks of hesitation. The Stoics understood this long before modern psychology gave it different names. They recognized that lasting change cannot rest upon something so unstable. Instead, they focused on building character through repeated actions until those actions became inseparable from the person performing them. This is the point where discipline stops feeling like an effort and begins expressing something much deeper. It becomes identity. You no longer wake up asking whether you should live according to your principles, because your principles have become part of who you are. Acting differently would feel more unnatural than remaining consistent. This transformation is quieter than most people expect. There is rarely a dramatic morning when everything suddenly changes. Instead, identity is shaped through thousands of ordinary moments that appear insignificant while they are happening. Choosing to finish what you started when no one would notice if you stopped. Remaining patient during an inconvenient delay. Keeping a promise even when breaking it would be easier. These moments rarely receive attention because they lack excitement, yet they slowly build the strongest foundation a person can possess. Every action sends a message to the mind about the kind of person you believe yourself to be. Repeat the same message often enough, and eventually the mind stops questioning it. Consistency no longer feels forced because it has become familiar. Many people unknowingly make the mistake of identifying themselves through temporary behavior rather than enduring character. They say they are trying to become disciplined, trying to become patient, or trying to become dependable. Although those statements sound positive, they still place discipline somewhere outside themselves, as though it remains a destination they hope to reach someday. The Stoics approach this differently. They focus less on chasing future identities and more on expressing present virtues. Instead of asking whether they had already become wise or courageous, they asked whether the next action reflected wisdom or courage. That subtle shift matters because identity is not built by thinking about who you might become. It is built by repeatedly behaving like the person you intend to be, even before complete confidence arrives. One of the greatest lessons within Stoicism is that excellence is never an isolated achievement. It is the natural consequence of countless ordinary choices aligned with sound principles. People often admire remarkable accomplishments while overlooking the invisible habits that produced them. They notice confidence without seeing the years of self-control that made confidence possible. They notice calmness without recognizing the countless moments of restraint practiced in private. They notice reliability without appreciating every promise quietly honored when no applause was waiting. As Aristotle observed, we are what we repeatedly do. Excellence, then, is not an act, but a habit. This misunderstanding encourages people to chase outcomes while neglecting the daily disciplines that create those outcomes. The Stoics constantly redirected attention away from results and back toward conduct, because they knew that lasting success always grows from consistent character. This does not mean life becomes effortless. Challenges continue arriving, circumstances continue changing, and unexpected setbacks remain unavoidable. The difference lies in your relationship with those experiences. Instead of seeing obstacles as interruptions to your progress, you begin recognizing them as opportunities to practice the very qualities you have spent years developing. Patience is no longer an abstract ideal. It becomes something exercised during delays. Self-control appears whenever frustration invites an impulsive reaction. Perseverance reveals itself each time fatigue suggests giving up before the work is complete. Every challenge strengthens identity because every challenge offers another opportunity to confirm the values guiding your actions. The remarkable thing about this process is that it gradually removes the need for constant self-motivation. There is less internal negotiation because your direction has already been chosen. Energy that was once spent arguing with yourself becomes available for meaningful action. You stop searching for inspiration in every new book, speech, or motivational message because the strongest source of motivation has quietly shifted inward. It now comes from living in harmony with the person you have worked to become. That quiet alignment creates a deep sense of stability that external circumstances struggle to disturb. The Stoics believed that peace is found when actions consistently reflect principles, and this is exactly why identity matters more than emotion. What once required extraordinary effort begins to feel natural, not because the world became easier, but because your standards quietly rose beyond the level where excuses could continue surviving, allowing every deliberate choice to reinforce the life you have intentionally built. This realization often surprises people because they expect transformation to feel exciting from beginning to end. Instead, it frequently feels like standing between two identities. One is familiar, comfortable, and predictable. The other is still taking shape, requiring choices that feel unfamiliar and sometimes lonely. There is a period where neither version feels fully complete. Old habits no longer satisfy you, yet new habits have not entirely become second nature. This middle ground is where many people quietly return to their previous way of living, not because they lack potential, but because uncertainty feels heavier than familiarity. The Stoics understood that this uncomfortable space is not evidence that something has gone wrong. It is often evidence that meaningful change is finally taking place. Every meaningful transformation asks for sacrifice before it offers reward. That sacrifice is rarely dramatic. More often, it appears in ordinary moments that no one else notices. It is choosing to leave a conversation that encourages negativity instead of staying simply to fit in. It is turning away from distractions that once filled empty hours because they no longer align with the direction you have chosen. It is accepting temporary discomfort without immediately searching for relief. These moments seem small when viewed individually, yet they slowly reshape the architecture of your character. Each decision quietly declares what deserves a permanent place in your life and what no longer belongs there. Character is not built through one defining moment. It is built through countless quiet moments where principle is chosen over convenience. Relationships can also begin changing during this process, and this may be one of the most difficult sacrifices to accept. Not every relationship ends, nor should it. Yet some connections naturally lose their strength when two people begin moving toward different values. This is not necessarily anyone's fault, people simply grow at different speeds and in different directions. The Stoics encouraged treating others with kindness and respect, but they also understood the importance of protecting one's character. If a relationship consistently encourages habits that weaken your integrity, remaining loyal to those habits is not compassion. It is self-neglect. Choosing healthier boundaries does not require anger or resentment. It requires clarity. Sometimes the most respectful decision is allowing distance, where constant closeness prevents either person from becoming their best. The same principle applies to routines that once felt harmless. Many behaviors become so familiar that they no longer seem like choices at all. They become automatic responses to boredom, stress, loneliness, or uncertainty. Yet, every repeated action quietly reinforces a certain version of yourself. The Stoics believed that habits deserve careful examination because repeated behavior gradually shapes character without asking permission. This is why they encouraged regular self-reflection, not to create guilt, but to create awareness. Once you become aware of a habit's true influence, continuing it becomes a conscious decision rather than an unconscious pattern. Awareness creates responsibility, and responsibility becomes the beginning of meaningful freedom. There will be moments when comfort calls you back toward the person you used to be. It will remind you how easy life felt when standards were lower and expectations were smaller. It will suggest that relaxing your principles just this once cannot possibly matter. These thoughts often sound reasonable because they appeal to immediate relief rather than long-term purpose. The Stoics understood that temptation rarely announces itself honestly. It rarely says, "Abandon your character." Instead, it whispers, "This one exception will not change anything." Yet character is influenced far more by repeated exceptions than by repeated intentions. Every compromise makes the next compromise slightly easier. Every act of integrity makes the next act of integrity slightly stronger. This does not mean you must become harsh with yourself. Stoicism is often mistaken for relentless self-punishment, but its deepest teachings point toward wisdom rather than severity. Growth requires patience because lasting change unfolds gradually. There will be setbacks. There will be days when old habits briefly return or discipline feels more difficult than expected. These moments do not erase your progress unless you allow them to become permanent. The wiser response is neither harsh self-criticism nor comfortable excuse. It is honest acknowledgement followed by immediate correction. The Stoics believed that virtue is practiced through persistence, not perfection. Every time you choose to return to your principles after drifting away from them, you strengthen the very qualities you are trying to develop. Gradually, the old version of yourself begins fading, not because you force it to disappear, but because it no longer receives the attention that once kept it alive. The habits that depended upon constant comfort become weaker through neglect. The fears that once dictated your choices lose authority because they are no longer obeyed automatically. In their place emerges someone quieter, steadier, and more deliberate. This new identity is not created through dramatic declarations or sudden breakthroughs. It is revealed through patient repetition and faithful commitment to values that remain constant even when circumstances change. The Stoics believed that the greatest victories are often invisible while they are happening because they occur within the character long before they appear in external results. That is why lasting transformation belongs to those willing to accept temporary discomfort without abandoning permanent principles. The version of yourself that constantly sought comfort cannot fully coexist with the version capable of genuine self-mastery. One gradually gives way to the other, and accepting that quiet exchange is what separates temporary improvement from a life that is permanently transformed. Eventually, you reach a point where discipline no longer feels like resistance against yourself because there is no longer an internal argument taking place. The decision has already been made long before the challenge arrives. There was a time when every meaningful action required negotiation. You would weigh comfort against responsibility, emotion against reason, and immediate relief against long-term purpose. Those conversations felt endless because every difficult moment invited another debate. Yet, through consistent practice, something begins to change almost without your noticing. The debate grows quieter. The excuses become less convincing. The hesitation that once consumed so much energy gradually loses its voice. What once demanded enormous effort now feels like the natural expression of who you have become. The action has not become easier because life has changed. It has become easier because your relationship with yourself has changed. The mind no longer wastes its strength arguing with principles it has already accepted. This quiet shift represents one of the deepest forms of freedom the Stoics ever described. They were never searching for a life without hardship, uncertainty, criticism, or disappointment, because they understood such a life does not exist. They sought something far more enduring. They wanted freedom from becoming the servant of every changing circumstance. They recognized that a person who depends upon favorable conditions for peace is never truly free. Good fortune may create temporary comfort, but only character creates lasting stability. External events will continue changing as they always have. People will misunderstand your intentions. Plans will occasionally fail despite careful preparation. Unexpected losses will still arrive. The difference is that these experiences no longer determine the quality of your inner life because they are no longer mistaken for the source of it. One of the greatest misconceptions about self-mastery is the belief that disciplined people somehow stop experiencing temptation. The reality is far more interesting. Temptation may still appear, but it no longer occupies the same position of authority. It becomes another passing thought rather than a command demanding obedience. The Stoics often reminded themselves that the first impression entering the mind is not entirely within their control, but the judgment that follows always deserves careful attention. This insight remains just as valuable today. Thoughts appear without invitation. Emotions arise unexpectedly. The difference lies in whether you immediately identify with them or quietly observe them before deciding how to respond. That brief pause becomes almost automatic after years of practice, allowing wisdom to enter where impulse once rushed ahead. As this habit becomes firmly established, your relationship with difficulty begins changing in ways that are almost impossible to appreciate beforehand. Obstacles no longer feel like interruptions to the life you intended to live because they become part of the very process shaping that life. Every setback presents another opportunity to reinforce patience. Every delay strengthens perspective. Every disappointment becomes another reminder that your values remain available regardless of circumstances. Seneca captured this truth when he wrote, "Difficulties strengthen the mind, as labor does the body." The Stoics frequently reflected on the fact that adversity reveals character more clearly than comfort ever could. Comfortable moments rarely ask much from you. Difficulty quietly asks everything. It asks whether your principles remain intact when convenience disappears. It asks whether your standards survive when no immediate reward is waiting. These questions are answered through conduct rather than conversation. Over time, this consistency creates an unexpected sense of calm, not because life has become predictable, but because you have stopped demanding that it be predictable before allowing yourself to remain steady. The future still contains uncertainty, yet uncertainty loses much of its power once you recognize that your greatest resource has always been your own capacity to respond wisely. This realization removes a tremendous burden. Instead of trying to control every possible outcome, your attention returns to what has always belonged to you: your judgment, your actions, your character. The energy once spent worrying about events beyond your influence becomes available for meaningful work within your influence. This is one of the quiet gifts of disciplined living. It simplifies the mind without simplifying life. People often notice this change before they fully understand its source. They may describe you as calm, confident or grounded without realizing those qualities were built through countless ordinary decisions that no one else witnessed. They see composure during difficult conversations, but never saw the years spent learning not to react impulsively. They notice patience under pressure without seeing the repeated moments when frustration was deliberately replaced with thoughtful action. They observe steadiness without realizing how often that steadiness was practiced in complete privacy. This is why genuine influence rarely comes from trying to appear strong. It comes from becoming someone whose character remains reliable regardless of changing circumstances. Quiet consistency leaves a deeper impression than dramatic displays because it cannot easily be imitated. The Stoics believed that every human being possesses the ability to shape their own character, yet they also understood that this work never truly ends. There is no final destination where growth becomes unnecessary. Every stage of life presents new responsibilities, new challenges, and new opportunities to refine the qualities that matter most. Humility, therefore, becomes an essential companion to discipline. The moment you believe there is nothing left to learn, your progress quietly begins slowing. Remaining teachable allows strength to continue developing without becoming arrogance. Remaining reflective prevents confidence from becoming complacency. True maturity lies not in believing you have mastered yourself completely, but in remaining committed to the lifelong practice of self-examination. Eventually, the greatest reward is no longer found in achievements themselves, but in the person capable of pursuing those achievements with integrity. Success becomes meaningful because it reflects character rather than replacing it. Failure loses much of its sting because it no longer threatens your identity. Praise becomes pleasant without becoming necessary, and criticism becomes informative without becoming destructive. As Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, the happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts. This quiet certainty changes the way you walk through ordinary days. Decisions become clearer because your values already provide direction. Setbacks become more manageable because they no longer define your worth. Even your presence begins carrying a sense of stability that others naturally recognize without needing explanation. The goal was never to intimidate anyone or to appear emotionally untouchable. The goal was always far more personal than that. It was to become so disciplined, so grounded in reason, and so faithful to your principles that external circumstances gradually lost their ability to dictate the course of your life. The Stoics believed that the strongest fortress any person could build was not made of stone, but of character, because character remains available when fortune changes, when comfort disappears, and when certainty gives way to the unknown. Reaching this point does not mean fear vanishes forever. It means fear no longer occupies the highest seat within your mind. The only thing left worth fearing is abandoning the principles that transformed your life in the first place and slowly returning to the person you worked so patiently to leave behind. The world will always offer easier paths, louder voices, and endless reasons to abandon the standards you have chosen for yourself. Don't follow them. The strongest life is built quietly, one deliberate choice at a time, until discipline is no longer something you practice, but something you become.